Sunday Roast, he is a social and political commentator and a regular and valued guest on this show. Good afternoon, James.
Good afternoon, Kevin. You well? You're looking very dapper.
Yeah, well, you know, TV, got to be smart. You said you were going to wear a suit this week.
Okay, I will next week.
All right.
Just on a one-off basis, I will. I did say that, but I forgot. So next week, I promise you, I'll be wearing a decent suit and black tie.
Next week, definitely. That is a commitment that I shall hold you to. Let's talk about the government. I want to talk about Rishi Sunak, his big bonus bumper handout this week, offering £400 to every household, to every bill payer, to help them pay their energy bills, and also a possible 650 quid more for as many as 8 million homes who are particularly struggling in these difficult times. Now, this was greeted with lots of positive headlines. Fantastic, well done, Rishi. My question is, James, who's going to pay for this? 6 months down the line, we'll be getting more tax rises to pay for this, just like we've just had a massive great tax rise to pay for the furlough scheme. I think Rishi Sunak is a chancellor who just kicks the economic can down the road.
Yeah, there's going to be a day of reckoning at some point. I mean, do you remember back to the age of austerity? There was 10 years of a day of reckoning then, which our public services was slashed because of the financial crash. Now, I read recently that basically 500 billion of new money, quantitative easing, has been printed during the pandemic. Now, I mean, that devalues. I mean, that's a cause and effect. One of the aspects of the cost of living crisis through inflation. It just is. You can't sustain that model. Even Mervyn King, the ex-governor of the Bank of England, was warning about the perils of rampant QE. Same problems are happening in the States as well. I mean, their figures of printing money are off the scale. So we've got that problem, combined now with a bit of tokenism in terms of throwing money to try and help people after the horse has bolted. Now, what the government should have done is got ahead of this crisis. But the crisis is interlinked. Some people will say that it's not, but it is. It's interlinked with locking down the country for the best part of 18 months to 2 years. Mm-hmm. You cannot sustain things when you're basically furloughed programs, businesses are shut, and the economy is largely closed for the best part of 2 years. There will be a day of reckoning. So you can join the dots together. The reason we're in this crisis is because of lockdowns and the collateral damage, economic collateral damages from that. I read recently, for instance, worldwide, they're estimating over 300 million could lapse into starvation because of supply chain issues connected to the lockdown. So we're looking at a series of problems. So what Sunak is doing now is tokenism, but all of this crisis happened on their watch, and what they're doing isn't enough. And yet they're actually taking away at the same time as well, if you look at the rise in national insurance.
Indeed. And, of course, the thing about Rishi's handout is, as you quite rightly say, it is likely to trigger rampant inflation that could cause massive problems. And already the Institute of Fiscal Studies is warning that within months he's going to have to do another handout, because although this ostensibly looked generous, it probably wasn't generous enough. So we are caught in a vicious circle of handing money to people, to desperate people, and then the rest of us having to pay for it with tax. This is economic insanity.
Yeah, it's economics for dummies. I mean, it's basically like a giant Ponzi scheme.
That's it.
It's just ridiculous. At some point, there has to be a day of economic reckoning. You know, I don't want the country to fall into a decade of austerity again. I was a massive campaigner against austerity because people were being punished from the mistakes of the banks. You've got a trade-off, which is effectively a Mobius loop between the problems of the financial crash that haven't been solved. It's the papering over the cracks of 900 billion of quantitative easing since the financial crash, combined with 500 million over the last 2 years, combined with government doing short-term economics. The windfall tax, for instance, on the surface, that looks like a good thing. It looks like a virtuous thing. But the energy and oil companies are already threatening pulling the plug on their investment on North Sea oil, and also threatening putting prices up again. Yeah. So this becomes a vicious cycle of more money thrown at the public because they need it, but they're not addressing the root problems. The root problems go much deeper than that. The root problems go in all kinds of things about why haven't we got a decent exporting strategy? Why haven't we got a manufacturing and industrial strategy? All the things that basically allow the economy to flourish. We take a step back from this. We've had 2 years where effectively the economy was shut. So therefore, there's bound to be an economic day of reckoning. And actually throwing some tokenism in terms of people's pockets is not going to be the long-term solution. As you pointed out, it's going to create more problems in the long term.
And let's not forget that it's only 2 months since Rishi Sunak's spring statement where he jumped up and down in the House of Commons like a Duracell bunny saying not 1, not 2, but 3 pence off a litre of petrol, which nobody ever really saw. He seemed to think it was a showbiz event in which he was going to bail the country out in its hour of need. And here he is having to do another handout. And as I say, Institute of Fiscal Studies warning that within months he's going to have to do another. I don't want to sound harsh or hard-hearted, but in the end, this government has got to stop handing people free money.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult trade-off because I think, the alternative is another, decade potentially of austerity. But, I mean, I was looking at, just in terms of things like the national debt. The national debt is now north of 2 trillion. It has doubled, more than doubled, actually, since the Tories came into power. The first part caused because of the fallout of the financial crash. This part has been caused largely because of COVID and the response to COVID and the bailouts of COVID. That model cannot be sustainable. It just isn't. It's basic economics. So therefore, they carry on a cycle of giving more handouts, not just to the public, but to business. And for business, I in particular mentioned the 500 billion of quantitative easing of last year's. That is a concerning model. There's a lot of economists are worried about that. As I said, Mervyn King was expressing his concern about that because a lot of that money isn't actually going to the real economy, but nor is it sustainable because it does have a direct effect on inflation.
Yeah, that's another 21 billion quid that he's handing out free. Well, as we're saying, James, it's not actually free, as we're finding out with the furlough scheme. In the end, you have to pay for this largesse. We're already paying for the furlough scheme, and soon we'll be paying for this handout and the next one. We are, as we both stated, trapped in some kind of vicious economic cycle. I hesitate to do this, but I'm afraid we're going to have to switch to Partygate. Sue Gray's report. Bit of a damp squib. We kept being told how impressive a woman she is. Well, I didn't think her report was very impressive. And the Prime Minister's come up with a great way of not breaking the ministerial code in the future. He's going to change the ministerial code.
Yeah, well, that's Boris Johnson in a nutshell. Is that, I've been busted, so therefore let's try and make it more difficult to get busted again. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, I have a huge problem with Boris Johnson. I've done for a long time. I don't think he's fit for purpose for the position. I didn't think he was fit for purpose for Foreign Office, but also London Mayor. He is the great charlatan who only happens to be good at one thing, and that's winning elections. And that's why he's fundamentally there. But in terms of his legacy, what is it? His legacy is duplicity and trying to wriggle out of problems. I mean, even Kevin, even his reply this week about trying to justify Partygate for the umpteenth time. They were saying, it's a noble, I don't know the exact words, but basically saying, it's hardworking people within the government who are possibly moving position, therefore we should give them a nod and a wink and a thanks. Well, sorry, there was millions of people that couldn't attend the funerals of loved ones, combined with they couldn't go to weddings, their businesses were shut. And they listen to this and just think it's one rule for them, the very rules they put in place, and another rule for everyone else, the rules that we had to adhere to, whether we agreed with them or not. The only thing, as I've said before, that's basically saving Boris Johnson and the government right now is a pathetic opposition who are more interested in base-level identity politics rather than actually have an open goal to put their own vision for Britain on the table. Right now, Labour could actually show that they're a government in waiting. A lot of people would listen if they did that, but they're not doing that. So we're left with basically a useless government that's run out of steam and an opposition that's looking in the wrong direction.